This is Walk to Wealth, episode 19. My name is John Mendez, and I am your host. Welcome to Walk to Wealth, where I motivate and inspire people new to the world of personal finance by letting you all in behind the scenes of someone who's still on his way. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. For all my new listeners, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you can make it. For all the OGs in the building, welcome back home. Thank you for all the loyalty and all the support. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Walk to Wealth podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, a very good friend of mine, Silva Christov. Silva, for anyone that may not know you, give us your elevator pitch. Who are you? What do you do?
Wow, we start with the pressure. Thank you so much for having me here. I've been looking forward to this day for a long time. The moment I met you, I was like, I have to be on his podcast. Well, I've been in this country for about 22 years now. I'm a real estate agent since 2009. Happy since I joined Keller Williams, I would like to say that this is when my career started, and I've been very successful ever since. I went through ups and downs, just like everybody else. I'm happy to be where I am because this is what I wanted, and I made it happen. And I believe that I made it happen with the power of my thought because I really wanted it, and yeah, that's what I'm happy to report.
Yeah, righty. So, a real estate agent. And so, Silva, tell us a little bit about your walk. You said you came to this country about 22 years ago. What was it like growing up? How did you end up here where you are today? Because you are someone that's is a very top producer in our office, gold level producer, which for those who may not know, she sells a lot of houses, right? Long story short,
I sell a lot of houses.
She sells a lot of houses, right? But yeah, Silva, tell us a little bit about your walk to wealth. What was it like growing up? What ended up getting you into real estate? Tell us a little bit more about your journey now.
Thank you. So, let me see. Is it better without the glasses? I don't know. I don't see anything without the glasses. So, yeah, I wasn't. I cannot say I had a happy childhood. I mean, I was well taken care of, but I grew up in a communist country and with lots of restrictions, lots of discipline, which is not a bad thing if it is mixed up with some kind of normalcy, if there is such a word like that. But mine was just do. And this actually transpires even today when I'm more focused on my work than pleasure and living life like to the fullest of it, which I just started to learn like probably a year or so ago when pandemic started. I decided that I wasn't happy with my life, and I started to understand that there is more to it that I didn't know of. And then I started to understand, I think through Tony Robbins' classes, I started to understand that everything that happens to us in the current life, like in present, stems from the past. And I really focused on understanding what happened in the past, how it affected me, and how to outgrow it, and how to learn from it so that I can apply it and turn it into a positive experience. And I wasn't happy. I know now that I wasn't happy as a child. I wasn't satisfied with my life back there in this country where I come from. I accomplished a lot, but I was never happy. This was my biggest issue. I had to figure out how to actually feel happy with my achievements, with my accomplishments. I mean, I had so many degrees. I've traveled the world. I created family. I built up home. And I never felt satisfied, successful, fulfilled.
Yeah.
you know. So when I came here to this country, I found out that we need to pay more attention to the small things and to start living in the moment and stop living in the past, stop looking in the back mirror, and just look forward, but appreciate the moment and live in the moment. And this is like the biggest shift that happened in my life when I started to look at things differently. And all this, I have to tell you, happened with all the classes that I attended outside of going to school and master
Hmm.
degrees and whatsoever. It's just
Yeah.
studying life from other people, from all the courses that I participated in.
Yeah, so Silva, I have a pretty, complex question to ask you right off the back, right? So, there's a saying, and it's like where we are now is just an accumulation of our past thoughts. As you were saying, where we are now is just, what we thought in the past. And, there's a whole thing with like first creation and second creation, right? We live our thoughts out and then that eventually becomes our reality. So our reality is really this our second creation. That's the second life, right? And so, I want to ask you, how does one live in a moment is if the moment that you're in right now was already lived in your thoughts, whether you
That's a
someone
great
realizes or not?
that's a great question, and that's a great question, and I can give you an example with what happened to me. So thinking about my past again, and I'm looking at pictures of myself when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11-year old.
Hmm.
And I know I remember that I had a burning desire to change my life, the way it was going, the way it was making me feel. I had a burning desire to change it. And now I know from all that I've read, I know that it is true. You need to have a burning desire to change your life, and then you
Hmm.
need to know what you want.
Yeah.
And so back then, I didn't really know what exactly I want, but I by all means knew what I didn't want. I
Yeah.
didn't want to be where I was. I wanted to be somewhere else. And in my thoughts, I was feeling like, okay, if I am doing everything that I'm supposed to do, in other words, if I'm a good girl, and if yeah, exactly, that's how I was raised. If I'm following the rules the way I am asked to follow it, which meant back then to be a straight A student, which I always was. I mean,
Hmm.
I was looking to follow everything that I was asked to do, and I believed that one day this is going to take me to a next level, to a higher level, where I will appreciate life more and better. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question though by that, but living now to me, and the way I said it was feel feel happy in the moment,
Yeah.
feel your moment now. Don't don't constantly um, compare to what it was in the past. Like I can give you this example with this book. I'm so grateful for the book club that I am right now at the office, with The Gap and the Gain. Did you read this book?
I've yet to read it. But it's on
Uh,
my list. I have a
so
bunch of books
I
right now.
actually, yeah, I listened to it 4 times, and this is a total description of my life, the way it was, how it is now, and how it is going to be moving forward. So I realized that I've been living in a position of a gap. I was coming from lack. I was needy, if you wish, even
Yeah.
in my life. But then all of a sudden, I realized that I mean, you attract more of what you think.
Yeah.
So if I was constantly living in a position of lack and coming from a position of lack, and that's why I was feeling unhappy, because I wasn't, no matter what I accomplish and achieve, it wasn't satisfactory to me. I always wanted more,
Yeah.
so once you realize and once you acknowledge that you are not in the gap anymore, that your moment now is precious and you have to give it the total attention, the 100% attention, then you start to appreciate it. And then you are actually taken into a higher vibration. I don't know how well versed you are on energy
Yeah.
levels, but all of us, we're energy.
Mm.
Like you and I are probably attracted because we belong to the same energetic level. Like right
Yeah.
now, we are vibrating on the same energetic level.
And that's just something I wanted to touch on too, because a lot of
And
people,
the more,
yeah.
huh?
Hmm. Yeah, I said that's something I wanted to touch on too, because a lot of people get the law of attraction mixed up, and everyone talks about the law of attraction, and you attract what you think, but there's a greater law, and that's the law of vibration, because
Yeah,
before you attract anything, it all depends on how you're vibrating and stuff. And so a lot of people try to attract good thoughts, but never change their vibration and wonder why life isn't giving them what they want. It's because they got the game mixed up and they try to skip step one and go to step two directly before they change themselves and change the vibration they were on, the frequency they were moving at. You know, they just started wishing for, trying to manifest. And I feel like a lot of people get trapped in that, oh, if I look in the mirror and, I say, I am great, I am good, I am successful. It's like, that's not changing anything until you actually change the frequency that your life is running on. And once that frequency changes, then from there, that's when the manifestation is gonna start, coming in, and the things will start attracting you. I feel like too, like once you start changing yourself, that's when God starts sending all the blessings, right?
exactly.
And
You
they'll
said
keep
it.
on coming.
Yep, you said it absolutely right. Because I was in class today. I'm one of Bob Proctor's students also, and I was listening to a live session today. We had a Q&A, and this is something that we repeat all the time. What you think is what you get.
Yeah.
Things are thoughts. So if you are in a negative state of mind, if you're miserable, if you don't appreciate anything that you have around you, you're going to get more of it. And people are having hard time understanding it. And once you click and once you understand actually how it works, then literally miracles start to happen.
And all the
You
things
start,
start
yeah,
playing
you
out in your
start
favor.
Yeah. And yeah, the universe conspires in your favor. That's what I have heard. And I like this expression because this is so totally true. I mean, you start to meet the right people, you start to attract and create the circumstances. Then you,
Yeah.
you actually stop being um, led by the circumstances. You create the circumstances that you
Yeah.
actually want to have in order to advance to the next level.
Exactly. And one thing I learned from I had a retreat with Gary Keller, as you know.
Yes,
And one thing I learned there is one of the steps. So when life happens to everybody, right? And
correct.
there's two ways you can go about living, right? There's the accountable way and there's the victim way, right? And one of the major differences between the accountable way of life and the victim way of life is that with accountability, even if it's not that person's fault, they take ownership for what's happened, right? And the more ownership you can take, the more you can change, right? Because you can't change anything unless you take ownership. Because then, if you're not owning up to it, somebody has to own up to it, and you can't change somebody else. The only person you can change is yourself. So even if something's not your fault, if you keep playing the victim route, you'll never ever change. Like even if there's circumstances, life happens to everybody, right? But until you are able to take ownership of everything, it's going to be very difficult to reach higher levels of success because you just be always pointing fingers. Once you take that ownership and that accountability and you live that accountable lifestyle, things will start playing out in your favor, because even when it's not your fault, you'll suck it up and say, okay, you know maybe let's say someone gets arrested, right? And it's because they were with their friends did something bad to get arrested, right? All of them. Instead of saying, "Oh, if my friend never did something bad, I would never be arrested." That's the victim way of thinking about it. Or you could say, "All right, this is my fault. I put myself in a risky situation where being arrested can be a possibility. Instead, I should have just removed myself and never put myself in that situation in the first place." That's the accountable way of going about life. And as I said, like if you're not taking ownership, yeah, it might not directly be your fault, but you might have put yourself in that situation, or you might have, had some little factor, although maybe very minute. It might be some factor that played into a role, and you have to take ownership for something, because if not, as I said, you'll just always be constantly pointing fingers.
Yes, I totally agree with you, and I had to learn it the hard way. Um, One day, I was living from the position of a victim because I didn't know any better. This is how I was raised, and I was surrounded by people who are like that. Okay, so um, it is very important who you surround yourself with. But I just recently started to be more selective. So back then, it almost cost my life. It cost my life. I mean, I almost lost my life before I started to think differently and to understand that we need to take responsibility of our life. Probably 3 years ago, I heard this for the first time because it was time for me to hear it. Sometimes you may hear it, you will not understand it, you will not start to do anything about it because you're not at the right moment of
Mm-hmm.
your development, of your personal development, and because you're not looking for solutions, but you're actually focused on the problem. And
Yeah.
this is when you look when you live from the position of a victim. And one day I heard, I think it was in Tony Robbins' class, that life actually doesn't happen to you, it happens for you.
Mm-hmm.
This is when you begin to realize that actually you can look at anything that happened and is from a different perspective. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing, nothing changed.
Yeah.
You are changing how you look at it, and instead of reacting to it, you start responding to it.
Mm-hmm. And I have another thought that couples that very well is that, we're human beings, right? Meaning we're being human. We're not actually human. We're just being human. So, with that being said, we're spiritual beings having a minor physical experience, right? And so, there's two things that, in life that you can do. It's you either succeed or you learn, right? Because every quote unquote like failure is an opportunity for learning and growth. And until you realize that we're a spiritual being having a physical experience, this short physical experience that we're having is meant to develop our spirit, right? And this is coming from Gary himself, right? And so
Yes,
until you realize that, you know, it's very difficult. But once you do realize that, you can become fearless, right? Because every time that you succeed, it's good. But every time you fail, it's to learn and grow and help develop your spirit more. So now you're not even thinking of failure as failure. You're thinking as it learning and grow for your spirit and further developing your spirit, which is what we're essentially here to do in this short time that we're living, right? And so with what you're saying, couple that with what I'm saying, it's like once you realize that, you have a whole different perspective to look at things from, and it kind of removes all fears from pretty much every situation. And so that's the one thing I learned like too as well from this past weekend. That's over down in Austin.
you said it so well. Yeah. And I don't know any other young person to know so much about the matter better than you. And I give you lots of credit. I admire you for taking the time to learn and study and grow, because that's the only way. And we once we realize that it's not only studying it but starting to applying it and taking
Yeah.
action is when we really change our life.
That's the one thing I realized from like most people and like very successful people. Not only do they have the information remembered and they can recite it and like teach other people, but that very information they have is like they internalized it. So now it's not even information that they can recall. It's literally their actual being. Their very being is like, for example, with Gary, that
Yeah.
all the stuff that he talks about, the one thing and stuff like that. That's his very being. That's how he carries out his life. That's not just information that he remembered from learning and reading in a book. This is actually how he carries out his everything and his day to day actions. And like so, it's not it's about, as you said, learning, applying, and internalizing. Because you can learn something, you can forget it, or you can learn something, you can still mess up. But when you learn something and you apply it and then you internalize it, then it's gonna be almost impossible to slip up because now you're that that piece of knowledge is now pretty much engraved into your programming. So now you're just running off of that programming now.
Yeah, and every class and guru that you decide to follow, I mean, I'm very careful who I listen to, and it is super
Yeah.
important who you listen to. But in this line of thoughts that we just discussed, everyone would say, okay, if you would like to create a habit, you need to repeat this same thing over and over again, 30
Mm.
days in a row at minimum. 60 days better, and 90 days is when you begin to master it. And
Yeah.
I can give you an example with meditation, because I changed my life implementing meditation. And I came across, luckily for me, a program that opened up my eyes and mind. And I started to meditate 3 times a day. And this is when I changed my life. I do take 15 minutes or
Yeah.
5 minutes, but at least, and I break the day in the middle of it. And once I meditated like around 2 p.m., let's say, or 3 p.m., I can do it in my car, leave the office, and just as long as I do it, it breaks the day. And after that, I feel like regenerized,
Yeah.
re-energized. Yeah. It's just something that I embraced. And then I also can give you an example with the morning miracle, the miracle morning. I have
Yeah.
slight dyslexia, by the way.
Yeah.
The miracle morning is something that also changed my life. And thanks to me practicing it, like I start my day at 5 a.m. and then
Mm.
I journal, I do my gratitude and do my meditation and do my workout and walk. So it's kind of a 1 hour in the morning that I dedicate to
Yeah.
reading my affirmations and all this. And now it's a habit. And I've been
Yeah.
doing it for actually third year now in a row. But you cannot do it only once and expect something to happen. You cannot do something like 2, 3 times and then, I mean, I've heard so many people who complain that yeah, I did it and it didn't work for me or whatsoever, but did you do the work really, or you
Yeah.
just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that too, and a lot of people fail to realize that our mornings are so important because when we wake up, let's say we have a battery, right? And this battery is our willpower, right? If every decision that we make throughout the day, it lessens, right? Every decision it starts ticking down. Like here's one thing, right? Most billionaires, right? For example, let's talk about Gary because we know Gary, right? What does Gary always wear? He always wear black on black.
Yep.
Black on black, right? Right? Because they don't spend their willpower making decisions on what they're going to wear. And if you like fashion, that's not to say you can't have fashionable clothes. It's just to say, just know that when you spend time picking an outfit, when you spend time picking out what you're gonna eat for breakfast, when you spend time thinking about any decision, your willpower slowly goes down. So it's highly, highly important that, right, you do everything that requires the most amount of willpower in the morning, as you said. So, your journaling, your gratitude, your workouts, your business as agents, they always say lead gen in the morning, right? Why?
Yes.
Because that's when you have the most willpower to do so. And if you wait till the evening, big decisions shouldn't be made at night. You already been up
Yep.
the whole day. Big
Yep.
decisions that get a good night's rest. And another thing too is like, as you were saying, like the habit. I've been pretty much having the same morning routine for the most part for like the past like 8 months almost now. Just because like I wake up early in the morning, 5 a.m. usually, and some days I slack off, and it's not perfect, but for the most part, it's 5 a.m. My Bible verse, my journal, my gratitude, um, you know, get ready to go to the gym, work out, and then in the meantime of all that, I'm on a couple different like Zoom calls and like calls like in the background or listening to podcasts, just constantly just putting information in my head. And I might not be able to like learn everything or take everything away, but it's still positive coming into my mind. And I stopped listening to like actual music. Um, it's been some time. I think it's like been a little like over half a year so far. But I don't listen to music anymore just because like most of the time, music, the lyrics are things that I normally wouldn't align my life with, right? And so now most of the songs I listen to don't even have any lyrics. It's like Jersey Club music, so it's like mainly just beats. And there's no lyrics because like your mental diet is extremely important, and your mind is most impressionable. Right, I think it's like 20 minutes from after you wake up and 20 minutes before you
Yep.
go to sleep. Right, that's when your mind is most impressionable. but nevertheless, your mind is always impressionable. Because although we sleep, our subconscious doesn't. Right? Our
Yes.
subconscious runs forever, non-stop for life. It doesn't need sleep ever. It doesn't need to recharge. It will keep on going. And no matter at what point of the day you're listening to anything, all that stuff seeps into your subconscious, whether you realize it or not.
That's absolutely true, and I'm happy that you're mentioning it, because in this book, The Gap and the Gain, also they're mentioning the same, that some people stop watching TV, and I'm one of them.
Yeah.
In 2013, I actually made the conscious decision to stop watching TV, and I haven't watched TV since then. I don't watch the news.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, news find me.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I mean, it's inevitable, but I have blocked all possible channels
Yeah.
and ways of bad news to get into my mind. I don't watch anything that could scar my brain,
Yeah.
because and my mind, because I've been through a lot, and I just look to preserve myself, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is this contributing a lot to my growth, because
Mm-hmm.
personal growth, because I'm very selective about what I listen to, and then it increases my creativity. So, like, for example, I don't know if you have read the Silva Mind Control book. John, John da Silva. He died in, I think he was John da Silva. I have the book upstairs. And there is one method that he recommends. He died in 1999. So, as a member of Mind Valley, I read about him, and I listened, and I took the class of this, the Silva method of thinking. And it's a technique which actually resembles meditation. And when I swim, let's say, I do it every morning. I start counting backwards from 99 to 1. And during this counting, you actually don't let any thoughts mingle in your mind. You're
Mm-hmm.
just so relaxed. And then I noticed that once I do this, I mean, I don't know if you agree with me, but oftentimes we have so many thoughts racing in my mind. We do need to slow down. That's the main purpose of meditating, actually,
Yeah.
or this counting backwards, because we need to help our mind to slow down so that we can recharge and start the process
Yeah.
again.
And I think meditating is something that more people should practice, even if it's not for, a spiritual type of meditation. Just because when you meditate, you become conscious of the thoughts that fly around, right? And then when you meditate, you also lower the waves, or slow the waves of your brain. And, it's very good to become aware of what's going on in your mind and stuff. And you kind of almost, in a way, once you reach higher levels, and I haven't reached higher levels of meditation, but like once you start reaching higher levels of meditation, you can be almost fully present and aware as to what's going on. And you just see all your thoughts, and you can gain a lot of clarity from it and stuff.
Yeah. Otherwise, you get mental fatigue.
Yeah.
That's what they call it, I think.
Yeah, and another thing I want to ask you too. So not only so I also don't watch the news. I also don't watch TV, just because, like, if anything was important, I would find out. Someone would tell me. Like, for
Yeah.
example, if someone bombed the White House or something, God forbid, but if someone bombed someone is gonna tell me, right? So there's no need for me to be looking at the news, because there's nothing usually good. Negativity sells, and most headlines are negative, and you know, so I stay off the news as well. You mentioned a little bit earlier too that you listen to Tony Robbins. And you also mentioned, that who you listen to matters, right? So who are some people that you listen to that played a major impact in your growth and your journey? And what are some of the big takeaways that you got from those individuals? Thank you guys for tuning in to today's episode. Again, I am your host, John Mendez. You can find me at JohnMendez_realtor and at Walk to Wealth on Instagram. Please make sure to subscribe and leave a review if you're loving the podcast so far. New episodes are released every Sunday. Look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode. Take care.